All right, so welcome everybody to the Conspectus Cloud webinar. Today's webinar, we are going back to basics. Yes, that is a typewriter there on the screen. Just, I don't know, show of hands who used to use typewriters for specifications. We won't be reliving any of this type of practice, but we are going back to the basics as to how we approach specifications. Where do you start? So who do we have here? We have David Stutzman, our president and founder of Conspectus. He will be giving the presentation today. I'm Tina Montone. I'm the industry liaison for Conspectus. And we'd like to find out where you are from. So if you are familiar with Menti, and if you don't mind either hopping on another screen or on your phone and going to menti.com, and the code for this survey or poll, I'm sorry, it's more of a poll, is 82868633. And can let us know where you're from, city or state, city and state. Okay, so we have Richmond, Denver, Downers Grove, Illinois, Naples, Florida, Berwyn, Illinois, Portland, Oregon, Philly, Lancaster, but always from New Jersey, proud Jerseyan, and Chicago, the crime capital of the world.
I'm sure the mayor is not going to be happy with that one.
All right. All right. Sorry, we'll move on. We'll get serious now. Let's dive into where is the starting point for starting your specifications here. Starting from the top, from proposal, acceptance, handoff, kickoff, SPD, which is also known as system and product systems and performance descriptions, specify, publish, and follow up. So with a team of 16 full-time specifiers writing over 200 projects per year, quality, technical accuracy, and efficiency is absolutely crucial to our team. So Dave, what is the broad scope, high-level starting point when a project comes across our desk?
Thanks, Tina. And hey, thanks everyone for joining us today. Really do appreciate it. We have a great crowd. And I want to invite you too, if you have questions as we're going through this, jump in, unmute your mic, and let's have this as a discussion. Okay, so when we're first approached, normally it's a very broad brush. Hey, can you provide a proposal? We may have a 200 unit residential facility, 4 floors. Can you tell us how much? And usually we try to probe a little bit more than that through the proposal. Do you have any drawings? Can you give us any kind of a project program? Sometimes we have to price something just from that very limited information. And way we try to go at it is we try to go back to the client with a little bit of information, say, did we understand it correct? Did we get the deliverables? Did we get the project scope correct? And then that helps us generate the proposal. So once we get the acceptance of the proposal, we go through a process of handing the project off to one of our specifiers. The principals here, myself included, are the ones usually responsible for writing the proposals. So we do try to hand it off through our project director, project managers, to be able to get it in the hands of our specifiers to start the project. First step, we run a kickoff meeting. We get everybody involved that's able to review the proposal, review the project, and hopefully at that time we have enough information about the project that we can generate a work plan, a basic spec list with some information about each of the spec sections that may be required. If we had our preference, every project would start with an SPD, system and performance description. Think of it as design narrative. Think of it as basis of design, which have been common terms used in the industry. Even substitute as an outline spec. And we'll get into a little bit more of that. Then we'll start into specifying traditional construction specifications using master format. Finally, the last couple of steps, publish and follow up. Publish, we go through a quality process as we're publishing. We'll have the specifier publish the documents, get it ready, in essence, to issue to our client. But we go through a checking process to make sure that everything is there, it's all correct. Headers, footers, and that sort of thing all line up, table of contents lines up. And we try to follow up. We try to follow up with the project so that we can learn something and be able to improve our process and improve the specifications.
Dave, does this process vary if you are a specifier on a team in an architectural firm or engineering firm versus an independent spec writer?
The process doesn't really vary. The advantage that in-house specifiers have, they can walk over to the designer or the project architect, kick them in the shins to get their attention, and then be able to ask questions, right? As an independent specifier, we have to rely on telephone, we have to rely on email, and hopefully virtual meetings in some respect to be able to get their attention and get answers to our questions. That's really about the only difference.
Yep. And we also have other ways of getting their attention too, which we'll cover very shortly. So for this webinar, we're going to dive down into just two areas, the SPD, like Dave said, the systems and performance descriptions, and specifications. In other words, uniformat and master format. So let's go through this step by step. First of all, what is an SPD? What is the function and what are the benefits?
Thanks, Tina. Again, because these are the steps, what you're seeing here is our actual quality steps when we're going through an SPD and beginning to create it. So we start with a checklist. The checklist is actually uniformat, and we're using uniformat down to level 3. So we can show you some examples of this. And Tina, yeah, there you go. Thanks. So here you can see the start of a checklist, A substructure being level 1, A10 being level 2, and A2010 basement excavation being level 3. So it starts just a single letter, that's level 1, a letter with 2 numbers, that's level 2, and a letter with 4 numbers is level 3. So we expand the checklist down to level 3 because at the start of a project, if I ask our client, or if I ask any architect, do you have a basement? They can probably answer yes or no. They may not know what it is or how it's going to be constructed, but do they have it? And that's what we're trying to get to, be able to answer these very simple questions. That's the start. Build out the format that we're going to fill out. So then what we try to do is move into what I call describe each of the spec systems or the building systems. And you see here right above this illustration, we have description on the left, and then we have a sentence on the right. So description is just a heading. The sentence is what we try to focus on. Can we describe in a sentence what the contractor must build? And my goal is to be able to use this sentence or construct this sentence in a certain way. We want to be able to talk about what it is that the contractor must build, generally how must the contractor build it, and then generally where. And our goal is to try to help so that we're not, so we're helping our client reduce what we're doing on the drawings. After we get through that basic description, everybody agrees that that's correct, then we can start to build out the description itself. So we can start to add more of the performance criteria, the design criteria. We can actually begin to add what are the components that make up this system. And for our architects that have assembly drawings, I mean, I know this is a pump, and probably most of you on the call are architects, so sorry. But this is a good illustration because it's a single line diagram that you can use that incorporates all of the different parts and pieces. And we can do the same thing with any of the architectural elements. So as we're going through it, we want to be able to have a discussion. Is this correct? And here you can see a discussion between myself and Ray Lemming, an engineer who is actually helping out on this project. Did we get it right? Did we include everything that did we respond to the owner's requirements? And we're using this as a way to capture all the requirements or capture all the discussion, so it becomes a record for the project as well. Ultimately, we get to a point where the discussions are all resolved, everything's taken care of, and we can approve the spec ready for use.
Dave, can the SPD be used throughout the project during each phase?
It can. And those of you familiar with CSI, you might recognize instead of System and Performance Description, SPD, CSI calls it Preliminary Project Description. The biggest revelation that I had about Uniformat and this PPD, as CSI calls it, if you lose the word preliminary, Uniformat now makes sense. Because we can start day one with a Uniformat description, and we can go clear through operations and have a valuable document for the owner. Think about it. If we're capturing performance and design criteria in Uniformat, that is everything the commissioning agent needs to be able to start up the building. It's everything the owner needs to be able to operate the building. So we're actually creating a valuable document and something that instead of something that we might throw away.
Okay, so not everyone does use an SPD or that approach in particular to developing their documents. So let's look at specifications from two perspectives, linking the SPD to the specs and then starting with the specifications. Can the same steps be taken from either perspective?
Most of them will be the same. The part where it may differ is at the very start. So if we're writing an SPD to begin with, we already are doing some of the discovery that we might need to do if we're diving into specifications directly as the first start. So regardless, the discovery still has to happen. And what we would do is we would go through and confirm the basis of design documents. We would create, if we started in specs only, we would create a work plan. The work plan is a spec list with some additional information. What are we going to expect to specify in each spec section? What are the basis of design products that the owner may and the architect may have selected? And what are our basic questions to start the whole process? We can accomplish all of that in the SPD. So that's really the difference. So we would start a spec perhaps with a spreadsheet, our work plan, instead of using the SPD to gather the same information.
Is there a simple way of adding master format sections as needed?
Well, one of the ways, you have a checklist on the screen, and this is a way that we're using in Conspectus Cloud. You can use it just like the checklist in the Uniformat. You go through, you pick and choose the sections that you want. The R list includes the entire master format list. Hopefully nobody does that. That's some 9,000 entries. Who needs that many specs? So we're trying to focus on spec sections that are a higher or broader scope. Here you see unit masonry selected. So it would be anything that is masonry in one spec section. The other way, and we can get into this a bit, but we can, from the SPD, link to master format. And in this step, what happens is our system automatically adds the spec section and automatically begins to populate some of the content, which helps as a roadmap actually for writing the spec section.
So it's more of an additive process, not subtractive, which can be a little bit more of a popular practice. The cut and paste or remove unneeded information. Can you take the same approach with the content itself during the editing process? And what does that look like?
Well, you mentioned additive and subtractive. So I look at uniformat SPDs purely as an additive process. We try to start with a blank slate. Traditional construction specifications is subtractive. So you start with a master document and you delete what doesn't apply. In my opinion, those are two entirely different thought processes. Because when you're starting with a master and you're removing what doesn't apply, you're not always thinking about what is missing that needs to be added. Where when you're starting with blank slate, you are in that kind of a mind frame where you have to be thinking about what is required to be able to add everything that's needed. So once we have the master format spec section selected, what we're doing is we're doing a gross edit with a spec checklist. The checklist is shown on the left here. So we set this up for each individual document so we can go through the checklist. We can do this pretty quickly and be able to choose what is included and what is not included. So here you can see special shapes is checked. Yes, it's included. You go over to the right-hand side, the master format spec, and you can see special shapes is there. It's included, it's selected. And you see the little tag icon. So that tells you that that paragraph happens to be connected to the tag, which is driven by the checklist. So once we do this gross edit, that gets us really close. And the benefit for us is with 15 specifiers, no matter who starts the project, using the checklist, everybody gets to exactly the same start point. So it's a quality control level. And now we just need to be concerned about the finite editing to be able to tailor everything directly to the project.
Can you use reference standards such as ASTM and UL assembly requirements to guide your process to narrow your scope even further?
You can, and I will tell you, you're looking here at a final construction spec master format. And in uniformat, stepping back to the SPD, I tend not to include ASTM standards or many reference standards. I want to look for standards that may be overall quality standards, things that will absolutely drive cost to be able to identify those in uniformat. Not so much in here, it's individual material standards. So think about if you're familiar with architectural woodwork, where AWI publishes quality standards. If we need to meet the highest or premium quality, we want to be able to identify that because it drives cost. If the estimator doesn't know, he won't include it. He'll assume something different, and then we've got a disconnect. So yes, we can do this, but as we're going through here, you can see it more discussion going on the right-hand side with comments where that we use these to actually get to a final review and approval. Brian, you had a question. You're sitting there patiently with your electronic hand up.
Yeah, I guess you kind of just answered it as far as what the comments I see going to, but I guess the ever changing of standards that are out there, I guess, kind of brings to light maybe how every spec for every job is very unique, and the time of when that spec is written, again, with jobs not happening maybe for 2 years, how do you adjust for that?
By staying involved. That's really the key. And if you're able to write some of these things, um, relying on what is truly industry standard and look at it, I'll just A653. So this is galvanized sheet metal. Will that change a lot over 2 years? Probably not. But some other standards do. Some are completely replaced. And if I go back enough years, A653 actually replaced multiple standards. So we need to be aware. We need to just watch the industry. Hey, Brian, we need to rely on folks like you to be able to help keep us, and Jennifer, help keep us informed about what's going on in the industry.
Makes sense. Thanks.
All
Okay.
right. Thank you for the question, Brian. So evolving specifications. So how and when does the SPD and specifications work together?
Okay, thank you, because this is my other revelation. And again, this is me personally, because I was preparing for a presentation I was giving to CSI. This was at a national convention, and the program happened to be in, now I'm dating myself, 2013. I drew a very crude sketch of this diagram. And this is where I finally realized that as soon as I removed preliminary from the preliminary project description that CSI was promoting, uniformat makes sense. And, oh, by the way, we can describe the entire construction in uniformat. What I didn't do, you notice I still have master format here. The presentation was for CSI. Master format's the flagship document at CSI. Did I dare just completely remove it? I said no. So what I'm suggesting is write in uniformat if you need it. If you need it, when you need it, take master format specs and plug them in. Do we need them all the time? I don't know. I don't think so.
But if you need to, you're able to, which we'll
Absolutely.
talk a little bit more about that too once we get in jumping into Conspectus Cloud. So we have just 2 more slides here. So circling back to documenting narratives and the basis of design, often the owner's project requirements are provided to the design team. Where is the OPR captured and how are the decisions captured?
Okay, I want to just maybe clarify one of the things, Tina, that you just had in this question. The owner, you would think that the owner's project requirements are provided by the owner on every project, and that's not always true. There may be times when the architect actually has to tease the information out of the owner to be able to help them actually program the facility. And what we can say is in uniformat, there's a place to do that. Here you're looking at element 0, which is really the introduction to the project. And you can see by some of the headings here, you can talk about project program, and we have just a small bit of it built out here. We can begin to develop project criteria that will guide the design team to be able to make decisions. The advantage here, though, is it's documented in the same place as everything else in the SPD. So now that's a ready reference. It becomes visible to the entire design team, which means you can start making decisions based upon the information that everybody has access to, which I believe ultimately helps us. Because if we know what the criteria are, and we're designing to meet the criteria, we can have discussions to keep everything in balance as we go, and hopefully then be able to keep the project costs within the owner's budget.
And there's a whole process too, that feedback loop where you're able to validate all these design decisions as they're made against the OPR.
That's right. And the diagram shows it. If you look at the diagram going left to right, is not to say that design is a linear process. We all know that it's not. But these are the steps that we're really going through as we're going through design. So if we develop the OPR, we start to write the system and performance description, we can test against the OPR. Did we get it right? If we didn't, we go back to the owner, because maybe the OPR needs to adjust. Maybe it's not the description. Maybe there's a cost impact that nobody considered. Maybe the owner has to adjust the budget. And that doesn't always mean reducing the budget. It could be increasing it. Maybe the owner has some pet thing that they absolutely want in the project, and maybe they need more money to get it done. So we want to be able to constantly test the decisions. And even though it's shown linear, what we're saying is this could be done continuously. We don't need to get to the end of schematic design or the end of design development and then test. We can test as the decisions are being made. And ultimately, if we do that, we get to the end, we don't end up with value engineering and budget busts. And hopefully we avoid all the rework that we see, which is so common. Ultimately, we get to the end and we've collected a lot of information. Now we can feed that back to the master specifications that we've written. And hopefully then we'll be in this continuous improvement loop.
Okay, so that is what we have. I just wanted to throw up here Dave's contact information as well as Ted Kenny. He is our director of sales of Conspectus Cloud. So feel free to snap a screenshot or write down their name and contact information. From here, we're going to actually start taking everything that Dave talked about and actually driving through Conspectus Cloud. Before we
Jennifer has a question.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so thank you. And I'm really glad you brought up the OPR. I think that's a very underutilized tool. And really, I only see it come up on projects that are officially being building enclosure commissioned. So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about how you are driving an OPR for projects where it's not actually just provided by the design team.
We're in a precarious position on that, Jennifer, because we're typically working for the architectural team.
Right.
So we're one step removed from the owner. We start to ask questions, which really are the things that would come out of having a very good or a well-defined OPR. So it's a matter of, we still have to answer the questions. So do we think about it ahead of time and document what should be required, or do we think about it as we go? And if we can think about it ahead of time, at least then we can still build this model where we can test decisions to make sure that we're following what the owner wants. So I would, hey, all of the architects on the call today, Will, Evan, let's start pushing the owners. Let's start dragging them along. Let's get them. Drew, you're laughing. I want you in this too.
Yeah. Some of the big, corporate or hospital clients have such things, but developers of the 200 unit apartment building do not have OPRs.
Well, you're right.
We're
But
dragging the information out of them.
Right, but we can help them along, especially if we have an organization that allows us to collect the information, which I believe is part of the battle. Because if we're just putting words in front of them that are not well organized, it's hard for them to comprehend what we're saying or what we're suggesting. But if it's organized well and even project to project organized the same way, it benefits everybody.
No, absolutely.
All right, Dave,
Thanks for piping in, Drew. Didn't mean to drag you out.
I'm going to let you drive now with Conspectus Cloud.
All right. Give me a minute here to get positioned. And I'll try to share the screen.
And please, anyone, if you have any questions specifically that you would like covered, jump in. It's very interactive. Okay. Dave can just start kind of going through the basics here, but if there's any deeper dive questions, we're definitely open to them.
Okay, so this is the entry screen that everybody sees in Conspectus Cloud. And here you can see on the left is my most recent projects and whether it was me that causing the activity, or I could look at it to see, was it someone else? Because if there's activity going on, I'm unaware, maybe I should be looking at it to know what's happening. I can keep notes about the projects. These are just simple checklist kinds of notes for myself. They don't really impact anything other than my memory, help me with my memory. So to be able to see any of these projects or all of my projects, I can go to this screen. Here you can see it's my projects. This is everything that I've been assigned that I'm currently working on. And I'm going to, today, I'll use this Maker's Mansion, which happens to be our sandbox project. But the benefit here is I can see everything. I can see a last activity. I can actually sort all of these columns. So if I want to see the most recent activity, I can. I can see what phase and what the status and who is engaged in all of the projects. If I open Maker's Mansion, here you can see we built out Uniformat completely. So we have all of the different elements in Uniformat, and we have the start of master format sections down below. We split them because not every project is going to use Uniformat. And dare I say, maybe not every project will actually use master format. We did complete one. I have one. It was a cancer infusion center. The only documents we delivered were Uniformat. It was built from that. So it is possible. It's not to say that it's the best choice for every project, but it's possible. Okay. The way that we start the project is here again for the Uniformat, we would just come in, we would expand down to a level 3 and start to make selections. And I said, I would venture that most architects could tell me if they have exterior walls on a project on day one. Unless they're building in the Caribbean, they probably do. So these are relatively easy decisions. If we have the exact same thing for master format checklist, so this is the complete master format list. And here you can see we already have some things populated. And we also have a way to be able to look at only the spec sections that are available, our masters that we're making available to everyone. Now, if you don't like what we have, you can create a custom section. We try to avoid that. You can actually import all of your legacy documents as well. And if I go back here, you can see we have people. So we know who's involved. We have on this particular project, nearly 300 people that have been involved that we've invited. So the number of people is unlimited, which is great. One of our examples that we have is a hospital where we had 75 people actively contributing to the specification. And as a result of that, the hospital is like a $1.2 billion expansion. It was a very complicated glass box, so a lot of curtain wall. So we had the curtain wall installer, the fabricator, the glazer, the glass manufacturer, the construction manager, the enclosure consultant, structural, and all the architectural team, all contributing to the curtain wall section. Curtain wall is done on this project. There was not one RFI on the curtain wall, not one. Everything was discussed in the spec section. The comments were resolved, and oh, by the way, that actually helped inform the drawings as well. Because all the discussion was there, it was all recorded, everybody could see the discussion. Okay. So if I open up, as an example here, the shell, and if I move down to, I can use the outline tree structure on the left and move down to the exterior walls. So here you can see some examples where architects, if you have an assembly library, think about keeping it this simple. Think about using it here in a uniformat-based description. I'll blow this up a bit, make it a little easier for everyone to see. Write the description, what, how, and where, add the illustration if it works, build this all out. And oh, by the way, if we have components, let me just back up here. When we're adding this level 4, we have standard headings. These will be the same for every element. They will always be in the same order. The reason is so people can find the information quickly, so they know exactly where to look. And if we come here and we add a component to this by adding a child or a sibling, in this case, a child, we're always going to bring this in as a keynote term, as a suggestion. Think in terms of keynotes. What are you going to call this on the drawing? And here you can see the keynote in the assembly drawing is matching the keynotes that we're showing here. Okay, this is going to help coordinate the drawings. And if you're working in Revit, which most everybody is anymore, Revit out of the box includes in the families, in the properties window in families, you'll find something called an assembly code. What is that assembly code? Guess what? It's a uniformat number. So in this case, if it's exterior wall, it'd be 2010. Revit tacks on 3 more digits so that they can have multiple of the assemblies. But here we're trying to match it up with what the architect was going to show on the drawings. Exterior wall assembly 1. Okay, so we can tailor this to match what's shown on the drawings. We can actually get the Revit model to also show the exact same thing. Okay. Questions on uniformat and system and performance descriptions while we're here? Quiet bunch, Tina. Poke them, make sure they're awake.
You can always count on Brian to ask questions, right?
That's right. Okay, so I want to point out a couple of things here that we're doing just to help ourselves. We have 2 columns here at the end: unresolved comments, unresolved choices. Anybody writing specs would recognize unresolved choices. These are the bracketed choices that you would find in Word documents. Unresolved comments are the comments that we're making in the documents where we're having discussions. The system counts them, and if they're not marked resolved, it's going to report them here. So here, if I sort by unresolved comments, you can see architectural woodwork. It's marked as pending. It hasn't been started. So these are the number of choices that we actually have to make to be able to get architectural woodwork ready to publish. And if I'm just going to pick one here, 042. We started talking about masonry before, so I'll use this. And when I open this up, you'll see something that might be a little bit different than you would normally expect. Most traditional master format spec sections will start with summary, and then very next item would be section includes. Well, it's still here, but we've added 2 things: work results and principal products. Why did we do this? Principal products. This is a material that you're going to find specified in this section. And you can see here, I'm hovering over it, and oh, there's this pop-up with a link. Where's this link going? This is going back to Uniformat because we connected this section with Uniformat. If I go to a final view here to see, now what do I see? Work results. The blue link that was there, this is the description that's coming directly from Uniformat. So this is connected. Okay. And if I open this up, it'll take us exactly to where this connection was made, which is right here. So we just added a link. The system automatically connects concrete masonry and this description. So it starts to build out the roadmap for specifying unit masonry. Why does this section exist? Well, there it is, because the contractor must build this, and this is what he's going to use that's specified in this section to build that. Okay, we mentioned doing a gross edit, and this one is actually pretty easy. We use something called single doc tags. This is the checklist that we're using to start the spec edit process. So we can deselect them all or select them all. It doesn't matter. Whichever way makes it easier to make final selections. And simply by excluding some of these, we'll get rid of the lintels too, and saving it, the system's going to apply the tags to the document, and we just created a gross edit. We go back to the document, and if I go down to part 2, we've eliminated a lot of it. So let's see, decorative concrete masonry. And here I'll scroll in a bit because this is a little bit subtle. Let me get this, close this down a bit. So here you can see decorative concrete masonry struck out. Why? This tag, decorative concrete masonry, decorative CMU is the tag name. It's not bold. It's not included in the checklist. So that already has done some basic editing for us, which is really nice because now I don't even have to look at this. And if I don't want to see all of these things that are hidden, struck out, I can simply turn off the view and they'll disappear, which cleans up the view. So now it's easy. But here you can see what's happened. We went from part 2 products. The first article is 2.2. There's something hidden. 2.2, the next one's 2.5. There's something hidden. So if we want to see that, it's not gone. It's just not displayed. We can turn that back on. And there's everything that was hidden.
So it doesn't make that automatically go to 2.3?
Only if we go to a final view.
Okay.
Okay. So now if I scroll back up to 2.1, remember this one was 2.2, this was 2.5, but in a final view, it'll renumber.
Okay.
Right? We want to make certain that when you're working in an edit view that you know something is hidden, even if you've turned off seeing the hidden text. Okay. Right, basic question. Any questions on that? We're coming up on about 10 minutes left, and if there's something specific that you want to address, I would love to do that. Okay. So let me put this back to edit view. And the other thing that I just wanted to show how simple it is, if we want to have a conversation here with this speech bubble, we can add a comment, and I'm just going to scroll over so you can see. I'll close this down, make it a little easier. So we can just add a comment using the speech bubble. And if I wanted to get Tina's attention, Tina, there he is. So I can grab Tina, I can type a message. Tina will get an email to know that she's being tagged in this comment. And once we publish it, she'll get that email. And here you can see we've got a number of comments here. And what happened? Who's seen this comment? So if you're making comments to each other and you're expecting answers, here's a way to know who's actually seen it. Seen it is not opening the document and scrolling past. seen it is opening the document, clicking on the comment, or clicking on the text that contains the comment, and then the system will count it. And remember, we talked about resolving. This shows up back on the dashboard, so we can resolve it. It'll turn it blue. Now the system will not count this as an unresolved comment. So it's a way for us to keep track of the status of the document overall. And again, because now this is resolved, we have ways we can turn those on and off as we wish.
So
Just
Dave,
to keep it cleaner. Yes.
I wanted to ask you too, what if you have existing Office masters? How would you, if you have, rather than starting from scratch, or if you already have content that's a part of your firm or part of your client's documents, how can you bring them in to Conspectus Cloud?
Yeah, absolutely, Tina. So I will show you here, and let me zoom out again a bit. So we have two sets of masters. We have Conspectus Cloud masters. Those are the ones that we're writing, that we're making available to everyone. We also have firms, and in our case, Conspectus masters. And you can see we've had a number of folks invite us to help with their masters as well. But every firm that's in a subscriber in Conspectus Cloud has their own set of masters. Now, the reason that we have masters here is we're trying to keep the Conspectus Cloud masters true to standard master format titles and numbers. So if we're writing something that is not true to master format, we're dealing with it here. It still lets us use it, but it doesn't confuse anyone that might be relying on on Conspectus masters to write their own work. And again, it's like, do you want to import your legacy document? Sure. You come here, you import, you drag and drop, as long as they're in docx. It's that simple.
Drew has a question in the chat.
I'm not looking at the chat. So what is
Okay.
it?
Do you want me to read it to you?
Go ahead.
What is the idealized and then the practical solution to last minute changes to the project in the SPD and specifications? SPD or specifications.
The idealized and the practical.
Mhm.
Okay, so I want to answer this in maybe an unexpected way, Drew. We invite all of our client firms to participate in Conspectus Cloud. And what I tend to do myself, I will invite our clients as authors. So I will give them enough permission that they can edit the documents themselves. So if you have last minute changes, you're able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
If I have last minute changes, I'm able to do it. Now, the advantage here for me, if you're making changes, if you're not listed as a primary or secondary author, I will get a notice that a change has been made. And that notice will come with a link, and the link will come directly back. I'll go back and open up the masonry again as the example. And from here, I can look at, we have complete audit trail. So what happened to masonry? Here, you can see this today.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. So when you make a change, if you're not a designated author, I get this link. The link comes back and pre-filters the audit trail to show me exactly what you've done. So what the advantage there is, I come in, I look to see what you've done, say, Drew, you did a great job, we're done. Or Drew, I disagree with you. So I pick up the phone, call you, and we work it out.
Yeah. Okay. And then are you like if there's like a change to like something in the SPD, are you recommending going back and changing that at, 75% CDs still, or do you?
I would love to see SPD kept current all the way
Right.
through the project.
How
Because
plausible is that?
how plausible is? Well, think about this. We can write an SPD fairly quickly,
Mhm.
right? So it's not a huge amount of effort. Most of the effort is the discovery process that we have to go through to be able to understand what needs to be there.
Yeah.
Keeping the SPD current by late decisions is also not that difficult. And if you record the decision rather than just saying, oh, we had this late decision, we're going to hurry up and make whatever change. But if you go back and record this, now you're looking at it in context of everything else. Does it make sense? Maybe it doesn't.
Right.
And now maybe it prompts some additional discussion. Hey, did you think about, because this change is going to impact, and
Yeah, there's a
nobody has looked
fallout.
at that yet.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Appreciate the answer.
Yeah, and here, we can see exactly what's going on here. So each element comes with its own complete, and you can use this to go back and directly and see that in context as well. Okay, so let me stop sharing, and if anybody has questions, I'm happy to take them. And if I don't know the answer, I'll get Tina to answer. It's a quiet bunch.
Yeah,
My goodness,
I'm-
it's Friday
I don't-
afternoon.
Hello. Hi, David. This is Ingidia Sanchez. I have a quick question. I have not seen the uniformat used as part of your software or introduced like as a summary in the project manual. How often do you see that happening? If you could circle back to that, because, breaking it down by uniformat makes sense if we're, doing certain exercises, but I have not seen that used like regularly. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. Yes. So realize this is my passion. I'm on a crusade. Currently, we're seeing maybe 15% of our projects that will adopt uniformat. And what I'm seeing it is when folks are asking us to get involved early in the project, uniformat makes a lot of sense. They might come to us and ask for an outline spec, and I try to steer them towards uniformat because I think ultimately it's a better solution. It's a more usable document. It probably provides better information, at least for the estimator. And early on in the project, that's important. Think about the fact that it was estimators that actually invented uniformat as a way to be
Right.
able to estimate a project early.
Okay, that makes sense. And that's how I've used it in the past. And, currently, coordinating with the estimators and kind of breaking down, all the cost and systems and so forth. So does it
Yep.
drop off once you get, if you're issuing out an outline spec and SD and you get, sorry, not SD, when do you drop that off? Because you're issuing, at least in, my world, an outline in SD and then outline specs in, DD. The TOC would come in SD. I'm sorry. It is Friday.
It is Friday.
I'm getting
So-
jumbled on my words a little. Apologize, but you understand what I'm getting at. When do you drop
sure.
that off?
Well, I want to just stick to something that you started. So a table of contents in SD. So think about building out a uniformat document and getting to that first basic description instead of an outline or instead of a table of contents. Even if you can't write the description, identify the element that you're going to need. If you move into DD, which is where AIA says you're supposed to be writing outline specs, then you can build out the rest of the uniformat description and have that serve as an outline. And I say that because who defines what an outline spec is? There is no definition anywhere. CSI only shows examples. They don't even show you what they say should be an outline spec. It's just an example. Okay, so my goal would be, let's carry it all the way through the project. So even when we're writing an SPD during schematic design, which is normally where we would start, I will ask our team, and I actually organize our proposals, that the very first task in design development is to update the SPD. You know, once SD is done, we have comments, we have pricing, perhaps. That we want to update the SPD so that we have a really good basis to move forward with construction specs. Our clients are still expecting construction specs. So if we abandon, as you say, the SPD, it would probably happen in design development.
Got it. Thank you very much. That's very helpful, David.
David, I have a question.
Sure.
And this is sort of very project specific for me, but I think relevant to this point of the conversation in terms of collaboration, both with our consultants, but also with the general contractor. And what I'm interested in is, you know, you talked about the development of the curtain wall spec on that one project. Earlier on in a job, where we are on Ronald McDonald House, you know, at the beginning of DD, working towards alignment with the GC on the price of the project. Do you see GCs getting involved in Conspectus Cloud with the design team at all?
Absolutely. That was one of my goals in even developing Conspectus Cloud, Will.
Yeah.
We want this to be unlimited participants, invite the entire team.
Yeah.
Because if the entire team is there and we get everything worked out during design,
right,
you know, far fewer questions later. We're never going to eliminate all of them, right? And even though I'm holding out that curtain wall example, to me, that's probably an oddity.
Sure.
To have none.
Yeah. Right.
But it happened. And so it gives us something to shoot at, right? So that the only way that happened is everybody that was touching that curtain wall was involved.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. No, I think that answers my question. I think that's in line with where my head was going with it. I think it the idea of that freaks a lot of people out.
It does. And I'll relay a story. So we had one client that was absolutely insistent that the only people that were going to be in Conspectus Cloud was the architect's team and us. And I could not get past this with this client. Could not. And I finally got him to admit why. They were afraid that somebody would see what they're doing.
Right.
I was like, there's no way to build collaboration this way. Right?
Yeah. No, I think they're afraid that they'll see it, but then put a wrench in the process before they're done. I think that's my take on the fear behind it. But I also think it's just revealing the wrench sooner than later. And because if there's an issue or a lack of communication that's going to come out at some point. But and usually in a more expensive time.
Exactly. You know, so if we can ask the questions early and answer them.
I think the challenge is coordinating that with the design process so that people are communicative and on board. So it's not so it's not scary, but that's a cultural thing that takes some effort.
It is a cultural thing. And I mentioned earlier that uniformat, in my opinion, is an easier document to manage and to
Yeah.
coordinate.
Yeah.
So the longer that we use uniformat in the design process, I think the better the coordination will be. And that's why I'm saying master format, if you take it and you plug it in, if and when you need it.
Yeah.
Because that way, in effect, all the decisions are already made.
Yeah.
So all you're doing is documenting them in a little bit of a different fashion. And the other part of this for me is that I would rather see master format being out there held as an industry standard. Okay, let me explain. So how many times do we need to tell the contractor how to buy and hang gypsum board? Can't that be a standard?
Yeah.
And isn't the real issue how the gypsum board is being used in the project? Uniformat. How is it used? Where is it used? And let a standard dictate how do you buy it and hang it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a simplistic example, but I think it drives home the point.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to add something on the estimating that we see a lot of time, spending a lot of time in design development on sections that are ultimately withdrawn from the project. And if we can get more estimating with a, let's say, even NDD with the SPDs or the uniformat descriptions, the contractor can probably give you a good estimate early on rather than waiting till late in the process to decide, no, we can't do this. We just had a project where we had over 20 sections withdrawn after CDs were done. And
Wow.
that was a lot of time spent on
It's
everybody's part.
It's a lot of time, and it's I don't want to say wasted, but it is in a way, and it's not only costs money, but it's a problem for the spirit of the project, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's demoralizing.
People are
Yeah.
discouraged, and then the project just becomes a lot more work, right? Because they haven't been successful. They feel like they haven't been successful in it.
I just think if they put more focus on a good estimate early on, like the military does with their projects, using the SPDs is a great way to tie those products to the even the schematic design square footages to give you a really more accurate estimate early on will save a lot of our effort to, spend a lot of time on a 3-part spec just to find out that, you don't need it anyway because it's not going to fit in your budget.
Yeah. Tina, we've already run over time. This has been a
Yes.
great discussion,
Fantastic
guys.
discussion. Yes, thank you
Friday-
so much. And I'm going to stop recording. And just so you know, this recording will live on our YouTube channel.